Da-da-da-da-da-da. You know how it goes. Sing it with me. Da-na-na-na-na-na. The average individual can probably count on one hand the number of movies that have retained or grown their cultural impact 30 or 40 years after their release. You ready? I'm gonna do it right now. Seriously, this is what I came up with off the top of my head the first time, all right? Star Wars, Jurassic Park, Superman the movie. I'm trying to think of movies that have influenced the cultural lexicon, you know, Batman.
I want you to tell all your friends about me.
Jaws.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Back to the Future, The Godfather. I mean, everybody has a Brando impression they can do, you know? And yeah, you know what? Ghostbusters is one of those movies. The story of how this epic movie came to be is long and kind of tragic, but there's plenty of videos explaining all of that. The bottom line for today is that there's a new Ghostbusters movie coming out soon, and I want to nail down the timeline of this franchise to figure out what is and isn't canon. So let's take a trip down memory lane and chronicle the timeline of Ghostbusters. The world of cinema changed forever on June 8, 1984, when the dream team of Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and Ernie Hudson came together with Sigourney Weaver, the inimitable Annie Potts, and the one and only Rick Moranis. Come back to us, Rick, please. You've been gone too long. We need you, Rick! Spoiler warning to all things Ghostbusters. And I want to thank everyone who joined the discussion on my Godzilla vs. Kong timeline video. The reaction to that video was epic. Thank you so much. This channel is still a baby, and I hope to grow it, so let me know what y'all might like to see me work on next. Give me a like, a sub, a commentito, letting me know what the skinny is on the DL in your hood and stuff. I have no idea what I just said. Okay, moving on. Our story begins in 1984 as we follow three Columbia University parapsychology professors, Peter Venkman, Ray Stans, and Egon Spangler, after they lose their credibility when the dean dismisses their paranormal research. The trio then launches Ghostbusters, a paranormal investigation and elimination service. After the team is contacted by Dana Barrett, they are pulled into an end-of-the-world scenario involving the resurrection of an ancient demon known as Gozer. Supernatural activity grows rapidly across the city, and so a fourth man, Winston Zeddemore, is hired to join the team to meet demand and give it some sex appeal. EPA Inspector Walter Peck, played by everyone's favorite 80s sleazeball William Atherton, decides the Ghostbusters equipment is too dangerous and has them arrested. But as ghosts continue to wreak havoc on the city, the mayor decides to let the Ghostbusters free to go bust some ghosts.
Somebody get me the Ghostbusters.
In the climactic showdown, the Ghostbusters have to battle demonic dogs, the manifestation of Gozer, and a giant Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. As a kid, I never understood where the Marshmallow Man came from. The VHS copy I used to watch had really bad audio, and it was hard to understand, so it wasn't until years later that I realized the reason they had to battle the Marshmallow Man was because Gozer told them to choose the form of their destructor. Ray is unable to resist her mind-penetrating penetrations, and for some reason the first thing he thinks of is
the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Defeating the Marshmallow Man, and Gozer comes down to crossing the streams of their proton packs, which is a massive no-no in the Ghostbusters universe, but I'll explain all that when I get to the part about the Ninja Turtles. That's right, the Ninja Turtles. Long story short, Gozer is defeated, the portal is closed, and the city is safe once again. Look, if you weren't a kid growing up in the 80s, you have no idea how big Ghostbusters was. This movie was a box office smash, beating out Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom as the second highest grossing movie of the year, behind Beverly Hills Cop, which ironically is also getting another sequel this year, which also, ironically, did you know that Eddie Murphy was originally offered the role of Winston and turned it down? Weird. But Ghostbusters went beyond just being a massive hit at the box office. A Ghostbuster was the thing to dress up as at Halloween. There were toys and endless amounts of merchandise. The movie went on to redefine what the term blockbuster meant, while also essentially creating a new genre that mixed comedy, science fiction, and horror. Cinema owes so much to the success of this movie because so much has been inspired and influenced by it. But in 1984, this franchise was just getting started. When the show's producers realized the appeal of Ghostbusters among young people, an animated series was developed in 1986 called The Real Ghostbusters. Though Harold Ramis and Dan Aykroyd helped develop the series, they do not voice their characters. Neither Bill Murray nor Ernie Hudson do voices either. And this is one of those things that has kept the show from being considered part of primary canon, because it could just as easily be a cartoon show that exists in the world of the Ghostbusters. Still, a lot of kids grew up on this show during the golden age of the Ghostbusters, so all 7 seasons are dearly loved, and most of them are pretty entertaining. At the start of the 4th season in 1988, the show was retitled to Slimer and the Real Ghostbusters. This era of the show included separate mini-episodes focusing on the ghost Slimer. Personally, I've never looked at the cartoon as a blow-by-blow of the Ghostbusters exploits after the movie, so I don't have any issues with it not being a part of the primary franchise canon. But how do you feel about that? In 1989, after a very troubled production, came the cinematic sequel, Ghostbusters 2. Though not nearly the blockbuster that the first movie was, and releasing to far more mixed reviews, Ghostbusters 2 brings back the whole gang for plenty of new thrills. Because our VHS copy of Ghostbusters 1 wasn't in the best shape and eventually got thrown out, I grew up watching the sequel more often. Like, a lot often. My cousins and I loved this movie. Set 5 years after the events of the first, Ghostbusters 2 dives rubber boots first into a massive river of demonic pink slime that amplifies negative energy, which in turn fuels the activities of malevolent entities. The spirit of a 16th century European magical tyrant guy is unleashed through his classic painting, and the Ghostbusters, after being arrested again, are released again to do some ghostbusting in what is, and I don't care what anyone says, it is one of the coolest courtroom battles ever. The whole chairs popping up thing scared the crap out of me when I was a kid, but then the musical cues rose triumphantly.
You got him!
And Bill Murray said,
We're the beautiful, we're the only Ghostbusters.
The Ghostbusters were back, baby. This movie may not bring the comedy as much as the first, but there's some good stuff in here. My mom never liked seeing evil things in movies, but she tolerated Ghostbusters 2 due to the citywide flood of goodwill that rises up in the end to help strip the villain of his power. Though considered a disappointment upon release, like many movies over time, Ghostbusters 2 is now looked at much more favorably, thanks in part to Paul Feig, who showed us what a really bad Ghostbusters movie can. Extreme Ghostbusters was a sequel series to The Real Ghostbusters that came out in 1997. It was set years after the first show's events when the ghostbusting business had died down and the team had disbanded, but when ghosts start to reappear, Egon Spangler is forced to recruit 4 new Ghostbusters to take over. The show only ran for 40 episodes, which isn't much considering the previous show ran for more than 140 episodes. This show seems to fit into the same general category as the other one when it comes to canon. It's easier to think of this as either a Ghostbusters show that takes place on TV in the Ghostbusters world, or it's a story that happened in an alternate universe. I have no devil dog in this fight. I had aged out of cartoons by 1997, and I was far more immersed in Ninja Turtles in the 80s, so the Ghostbusters cartoons never hit home with me. But upon revisiting the show for this retrospective, I, like many fans of the franchise, am a bit frustrated that the show wasn't treated with more reverence, and was played for more kid-friendly laughs than anything that should be taken as serious canon. Cinematic universes weren't a thing back in the 80s and 90s. No one was really worried about continuity, which is why the canonical continuity of the Ghostbusters franchise feels so frustrating. But I'll talk more about that in a minute. I have to briefly mention the comic books because there are a lot of them. They threw everything in the kitchen sink at the Ghostbusters comic books. The Ghostbusters went up against werewolves and aliens, sometimes in alternate realities, sometimes in 3D. In typical comic book fashion, it's all the weirdest ideas that would never be put to screen because most of them are just kind of
Stupid.
Beginning in 1988 and running concurrently with the animated TV show, Now Comics and Marvel UK published Ghostbusters comics for quite a while. In 2004, 88 MPH Studios published Ghostbusters Legion. Tokyo Pop published Ghostbusters Ghostbusted in 2008. At best, some of these comics are considered secondary canon. What that means is they contain snippets of things like character backstory that are considered part of the main franchise, even if the actual stories are not. At the end of 2023, Dark Horse Comics began publishing a series of Ghostbuster comics that, as of the publication of this video, are considered to be part of the primary canon. But what if I told you that all of it is sort of? IDW's Ghostbusters 101, published in 2017, revealed that crossing the streams to defeat Gozer in the first film created a multiverse of Ghostbusters. In the original movie, Egon explains that crossing the streams is dangerous due to the possibility of such an explosion causing a rip in the space-time continuum, which could destroy all life in an instant, and something to do with antiprotons and other dimensions. Look, I don't really understand it. If you want a breakdown on the invented science, check out the video by Channeling Spirits. They break it down with all the precision and enthusiasm of someone who has way too much time on their hands. Like me. Anyway, the explosion caused by crossing the streams blasted Gozer back to his own dimension, but also blasted all the thoughts, concepts, and methods of the original Ghostbusters onto certain individuals throughout multiple worlds, making the original Ghostbusters the true architects of the franchise, while bringing pretty much everything else into canon. In their crossover with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Ghostbusters built an interdimensional gateway, which now allows them to explore the multiverse and cross over with a variety of characters and variants of themselves, but it also holds the potential of allowing other entities to cross over into their world as well. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a comic book catch-all. It allows for creators to pick and choose what parts of the canon they want to bring into their stories without completely or officially disregarding any of it. Like I said in my definitive Godzilla vs. Kong timeline video, hold on to this continuity stuff loosely, because modern writers hate homework. They're too lazy to familiarize themselves with things like lore and established history. They just want to write themselves into whatever story they're hired to work on, so expect that at some point some Hollywoodized filmmaker is going to come along and retcon your favorite story bits because they know better and we are just insignificant peasants with money.
So let it go.
One piece of retconned Ghostbusters canon that left many upset was Ghostbusters the video game in 2009. There have been a lot of Ghostbusters video games, but for this one, Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis helped develop it, and much of the original cast returned to voice their characters. The game looks like the movies and feels like the movies and has the same kind of comedy stylings as the movies. While it might not make up for the absence of a legit sequel film, it is a great game that stays true to the Ghostbusters formula. For over a decade, this was seen as the official sequel to Ghostbusters 2. Even Dan Aykroyd himself said the game was essentially the third movie. Naturally, many fans were disappointed when Jason Reitman, director of Ghostbusters Afterlife, said the game was no longer in continuity. But you can argue with people on Reddit about this, because for everyone who says the game's not canon, Reitman said so, there's somebody who says, nuh-uh, the game is canon, Aykroyd said so. And somebody else will go, nuh-uh, only the movies are canon. And somebody else will go, nuh-uh, I like the game. And somebody else will be like, but now we come to Ghostbusters Answer the Call, also known as Ghostbusters 2016, also known as the Ghostbusters Reboot, also known as one of the biggest bombs of 2016. Answer the Call is not considered part of primary canon, but is rather seen as an alternate universe take on the Ghostbusters story, politicized into a weapon for modern feminism. I mean, that's really what it is. It's sad what happened to this movie and the careers of the actresses involved, because there was potential here, but this was before Hollywood realized that these all-female reboot movies don't work. I mean, has anyone ever done an all-male reboot movie? No. And you want to know why? Because that would be
stupid.
Just make a good movie, put women in it, put men in it, respect both genders for the unique and interesting strengths they bring to the table, and enjoy the boatloads of cash your movie will bring in. It's really that simple. A third official sequel to Ghostbusters 1 and 2 has been in the works since the late 1980s, but production routinely stalled for a number of reasons, such as the reluctance of megastar Bill Murray to return to the role, and then in 2014 with the tragic passing of the dearly loved Harold Ramis. Gosh, we miss you, dude. In 2019, after the franchise was seemingly ended by the disastrous 2016 reboot, the Ghostbusters were resurrected by Jason Reitman, son of Ivan Reitman, who directed the original movie. The fandom began to rise, and excitement started to grow, especially when whispers that the original cast would be returning for cameos. The film takes place 32 years after the original, when the family of Egon Spengler inherits his decrepit home in Oklahoma. The movie picks up on story threads from the first two movies and the 2009 video game involving Ivo Shandor, who established the cult of the apocalypse summoning spirit from the first movie. Egon found the resting place of Shandor's body, but lost his life while single-handedly trying to stop Ozer from returning once again. When his grandchildren arrive at his estate, they find the ghost-busting equipment and eventually pick up the fight against evil, in a finale that sees the original Ghostbusters, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, and Ernie Hudson return to assist. And I ain't gonna lie, I tear up when the ghost of Egon returns to help his granddaughter and his friends in stopping the apocalypse one last time. It was awesome, dude. Was the movie a little trite? Yeah, but it was a perfect homage to not just the Ghostbusters franchise, but also to Ramis himself, simultaneously honoring his legacy as an actor and also the legacy of his character. But you know, that's just my opinion. All you other peasants can argue about it on Reddit. In a post-credits scene, it is revealed that Winston, now a wealthy businessman, is funding the restart of the Ghostbusters in their original firehouse in New York City, which is where the sequel begins on March 22nd. What do you think? Do you have a favorite Ghostbusters movie, or did the craze completely pass you by? Maybe I'll see you standing in line for Ghostbusters Frozen Empire later this month. I'll be seeing it somewhere in San Antonio, although maybe Hawaii. We're going to vacation in Hawaii. I'm not sure when we're coming back. We're going to go, and then we'll come back, and I'll see it somewhere in between. Anyway, that's all I got. Bye!